Promise I will not kill you until you reach the top.
That's very comforting, but I'm afraid you'll just have to wait.
I suppose it was inevitable that I would eventually come to this fight. You can't talk about fighting in films without eventually coming to The Princess Bride, the duel on the cliffs of insanity. I will state that this is one of my favorite movies. I love the characters, the story, the actors, the humor is witty, and it's very simple and well made. Unfortunately, in the words of George Carlin, if you love something, set them free. If they come back, set them on fire.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to kill you.
You seem a decent fellow. I hate to die.
Begin.
Okay, with this initial attack, they are clearly out of distance, which was established by the previous shot, and are nowhere near cutting range. That parry and that cut make no sense because he wouldn't hit him anyway. He's just standing there and swinging his sword at the man in black, and the man in black is in no danger because Inigo is not advancing with this attack. He just stands there and swings. If you're going to attack someone, you have to step into range to attack them. Again, clearly out of range. I don't mind them attacking each other's blades just to test their opponent to see what they do, but the cuts to the head are nowhere close enough to work, so there's no point in them dodging the attacks to the head. Now we get into the first exchange, and the first thing I will point out is how neither of them are actually moving closer or further each other in relation to each other. When one advances, the other retreats, and vice versa, so they stay at the same distance the entire time. Right now, they are not even lunging really, just stepping at each other, so no one is in danger, and there is so much CBS going on, it's rather ridiculous.
You're using Bonetti's defense against me, huh?
Now, we don't actually know what Bonetti's defense is since we are unsure of how he fought. For my Hema mateys out there, he was the Italian instructor in London George Silver disliked so much. Many contemporary rapier instructors believe Bonetti was not necessarily the best swordsman since not much of his ways of fencing really survived. Methods that worked were the ones that tended to live on, so it's not fair to assume George Silver was totally accurate in his assumption of the skill of the rapier since Bonetti is the only Italian he saw doing it. Or at least the only Italian he saw doing it in London at the time. It was also very much a turf war competing for students, so he was less English nobleman trying to protect his countrymen by teaching them the true art of arms, and more like Clint Eastwood in Gran Torino.
I thought it fitting considering the rocky terrain.
Naturally, you must expect me to attack with Capofero.
Capoferro was a much later fencing master, dating to the early 1600s, while Bonetti is from the 1570s upward. Swords had shifted a bit from the cut and thrust to a more slender, longer blade that relied much more on thrust-centric technique versus cut. And while Capoferro does show cuts in his book, they are more flesh wounds and are only in a few, while the rest involve thrusts to the face and chest. The move they are possibly referring to in the film is the idea of the lunge, which was not exclusive to Capoferro, but was not the passing footwork that relied on earlier cut and thrust systems.
Naturally, but I find that Tybalt cancels out Capofero.
Tybalt, or Thibault, or however you pronounce it, was a Dutch fencing master who used geometry and math to aid his fencing, which many swordsmen have done before and after him. The man in black is theorizing that the higher ground gives him added measure when defending against thrusts. Which is true if you are thrusting to the chest, and the opponent is taller, then you will be at a reach disadvantage. He could also perform a sidestep similar to the way the Spanish will rotate around an opponent, but rather than cut, simply thrust the point into the throat of the opponent.
Don't you?
Unless the enemy has a study, he's a gripper. Which I have.
Agrippa is accredited with reducing the several complex and differently named guards down to the 4 he found the most useful to him. For Agrippa to cancel out Thibault, whatever, he could do something similar to the left foot girata or slip step for stage combat people, or something similar to a passata sotto, which, for you stage combat people, looks like this. Before, it looked like this. It means to pass underneath, not to pass back. Basic Italian people, get on Google or something. Now that we got all that out of the way, I will say that neither of them are doing what they are talking about, so while it is a nice addition to have, it is totally not what those techniques are supposed to look like.
You are better than I am. Then why are you smiling? Because I know something you don't know.
And what is that?
Now they are cutting way too much with a weapon that does not cut well already. And now even their thrusts are weak-ass thrusts because they are just extending their hands out there. In order for a thrust to be effective, you have to put your body weight behind it. Think about the whole bed of nails, walking on nails magic trick. Here, I have taken an article that helps explain it from the Union University Department of Physics website written in 2000. Suppose 2,000 evenly spaced nails support you. The combined nail points would have a total surface area of 20 square inches. If you assume an adult man weighs 160 pounds, then his weight is spread over 20 square inches of nails, and the pressure on him is only 8 pounds per square inch of nail tips. If each nail tip is only 1/100th of a square inch, then each nail supports only 8/100ths of a pound of weight. While this may not be very comfortable, it is manageable, and a person can tolerate each nail pushing on their skin with only an ounce or so of force. The resulting force per unit area or pressure is not sufficient to pierce the skin. The same is true with a sword. If you do not have an adequate amount of force behind your thrust, you will just give him a tap with the tip of your point. You won't cause any meaningful damage. You'll just give him a very terrible, horrible, nasty boo-boo.
You're amazing. I ought to be after 20 years.
God damn it, there ought to be a law against this Hollywood death bind. Hey Inigo, you're pressing your whole body weight onto both his arms. You still got a spare hand, haven't you?
There's something I want to tell you.
Tell me. I'm not left-handed either.
Bullshit. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. Unless Inigo has butterfingers, which if he does, he should definitely find a new line of work, that should not have disarmed him. That is very bad for your sword, sir. Okay, that was impressive.
Who are you?
No one of consequence.
I must.
Get used to disappointment.
That's some ridiculous ass shit right there. I'm just gonna say it. What the fuck? First of all, Inigo, you didn't need to spin around. Second, why did the man in black thrust in between his legs at the ground? And third, the leg sweep and jump is total bullshit as well. It's stupid, impractical, and dumb. Disarm was dumb. Trick was impressive. Wow, that took a long time to fall down. Were this a fight to the death, he would be dead. Way too much cutting, again. Holding the rapier with two hands is actually something I have done in a tournament. Once. And it is really only effective, quote-unquote, to a point. The best method I found, which I would really not recommend doing against someone who knows how to fence, is to treat it like a longsword and use it to clear the line and then close in with a cut to the face. Essentially using the universal parry from Dente de Chingiara and coming back down. However, if you are fighting against anyone who knows how to keep their point free, you will find yourself looking like a very foolish pincushion indeed. Don't try playing the longsword game with a rapier. It always ends badly. This is actually an excellent example of what I was just talking about, with these big movements being avoided by a small one, then coming in with a thrust to the face, is actually what you would do facing somebody with a more cut-oriented sword. Try to get them to cut at or bind your sword and keep it free the entire time, and as they make these big movements to find it, take advantage of the opening and stab them in the face. This fight is totally impractical and not very historically accurate at all. But for me, that's okay. It is entertaining and well filmed, and the motivation for each character makes sense why they aren't actively trying to kill each other right off the bat, which could be used to explain the lack of good technique. It is also stage combat taken to the highest level, if you ask me, because it is a mix of small sword stage combat and rapier stage combat taken as far as it can go, which can be entertaining in its own way. Kind of like musical theater tap dancing versus river dancing or rhythm tap dancing. Similar and in their own way entertaining, but some more complicated and creative than others. And for the record, Happy Feet was my shit.